Why was she, the only one who sensed something was wrong long before anyone else did? Sarah Cade lay prone on the cold shale of the ridgeline, cheek settling against the stock of her rifle. The world narrowed to a thin circle of glass and breath. She had felt the shift before the ambush began, before the first staccato bursts ripped through the valley, before the compound below erupted into chaos. It wasn't noise that warned her. It wasn't movement. It was something quieter, deeper. A tightening in her chest she'd learned not to ignore. A whisper of instinct honed through years of watching things go bad at the exact moment. No one expected them to. She had tried to warn Nalen Rook earlier. He'd been her spotter for 2 rotations, sharp-eyed, calm, the kind of soldier who rarely missed anything. But even he didn't see it the way she did. "You're wound tight today," he'd murmured while adjusting the spotting scope. "Something on your mind." She almost told him, almost admitted the sensation pulsing under her ribs, something just shy of dread. But then she caught movement through her scope, seals moving into the compound, fluid, confident, unaware of the storm creeping toward them. "Just a feeling," she whispered. Rook gave a soft, knowing smile. "Those feelings of yours keep us alive." He wasn't wrong, but he didn't know she carried another reason for her tension, one she never talked about, not even to him. Something she hadn't told anyone on this operation. Not yet. Then everything snapped open at once. The valley ignited. Automatic gunfire hammered the compound like a storm breaking over steel. Muzzle flashes streaked from ridges, rooftops, doorways. Fighters poured in from every angle, coordinated, planned, waiting for the exact moment Creed's team stepped into the kill zone. Sarah felt her stomach drop, breath locking at the sight of it. "No, not like this." Nalen Rook jerked upright behind his optic. "The hell, they're surrounded." He didn't finish. A single harsh crack echoed across the ridge. Nalen stiffened, the spotting scope tumbling from his hands. Sarah grabbed him by instinct, dragging him backward as blood bloomed across his shoulder. Stay with me, Rook," she said, ripping her medical pouch open with her teeth. He ground out, chest heaving. "I'm good, just shot." Just shot, the understatement almost made her laugh. He was pale, shaking, but breathing. She slapped on a dressing, cinched it tight and forced her voice steady. "You're done, don't move, don't even blink." He gripped her wrist. "Cade sniper, window, 3 o'clock, he's still looking for you." She froze for half a heartbeat, then slid her rifle back into position, using only minimal movement. There, an enemy shooter tucked behind crumbling stone, scanning for her. He didn't fire again. She did. The man's rifle clattered as he slumped, disappearing in a wash of dust. But Sarah barely registered the kill. The compound roared with trapped voices, panicked comms, wounded men screaming for cover that didn't exist. Creed's voice broke through the radio, tight, strained. "We're pinned, multiple casualties, enemy all sides. Any support element respond." Sarah's pulse hardened into something icy and absolute. She could respond. But responding meant breaking protocol. Overwatch snipers weren't supposed to engage full force unless ordered. They were eyes first, trigger second. Their job was restraint. But doctrine didn't matter when you watched allies walk into a meat grinder. She raised her radio, thumb hovering over transmit. "You're out of line. You'll get court-martialed. You're alone out here. You'll die." She clicked transmit anyway. Except she didn't say her name, didn't break comms discipline, didn't announce she was acting on her own. She said nothing at all. She simply aimed. Her first target was the PKM gunner tearing Creed's cover apart. Sarah steadied her breathing, the world slowing into long, controlled seconds. She squeezed. The gunner's body folded backward and the compound exhaled one breath of relief. But Sarah didn't. She was already shifting, scanning, prioritizing. Another threat. Another angle. Another heartbeat away from losing someone. She fired again and again, each shot deliberate, each target eliminated before the next could adjust. She moved with quiet fury, no hesitation, no wasted motion. The rifle kicked into her shoulder like an old friend, repeating the same honest truth over and over. You can save them. You can save them. You can save them. But then she realized something was missing. Silence. The kind she hated most. She glanced back at Nolan Rook. He was conscious, breathing but slipping in and out. Stay awake, she ordered softly. I need you. He nodded once slow. I'm not going anywhere. But she saw the pain in his eyes, the way he fought to remain upright. The guilt hit her harder than recoil. She should have protected him, should have anticipated the enemy sniper earlier, should have something, anything. Guilt could drown a sniper faster than enemy bullets, and she knew it. But there was no time for it. The SEAL team below was fracturing under pressure, forced into tighter cover as fighters advanced. Creed was shouting orders, his voice steady but strained. Machine gun East Ridge is active. RPG team north. Sniper in tower, move, move. She could hear it, the edge in his tone, the realization. They were minutes from being wiped out. Something churned deep inside her chest, a place she rarely touched. Not fear, not anger, something older, heavier. The same raw emotion she carried the day she decided she would never again watch people die while she stood by with a rifle and excuses. She had failed once, years ago, a moment she never spoke about. And she refused to repeat it. Sarah checked her magazines, 8 full, 1 in the rifle, a total of 160 rounds. Logical math said it wasn't enough. Experience said it might be. Determination said, try anyway. She settled back into the dirt, cheek locking to the stock, rifle aligned. The compound sharpened into crisp detail. Every enemy position mapped itself in her mind, patterns, angles, timing. She could feel the rhythm of the battle, the way it breathed. She knew exactly where to start. She whispered under her breath, too soft for Rook to hear, but loud enough to anchor herself. Come on, one problem at a time. The next shot cut down an RPG operator preparing to fire into the compound. The next removed a sniper in a shadowed window. Another shattered a machine gun crew desperately trying to reposition. Each kill shifted the battlefield. Each shot bought seconds, then minutes. A small voice inside her kept whispering, not enough. You're one person. You can't stop 30 men. But another voice, stronger, steadier, reminded her who she'd become. A shooter shaped by thousands of hours, and a father who taught her that precision wasn't just about hitting targets. It was about knowing why you pulled the trigger in the first place. Sarah Cade wasn't shooting to rack up numbers. She was shooting because those men below were human beings trying to stay alive. And she could help them. As more fighters poured in, adapting, shifting, spreading out, she felt something settle inside her, not panic, not doubt. Something almost serene. She accepted the risk, the exposure, the consequences, all of it. Because there was something she hadn't told Creed's team. Something she hadn't told Rook. Something she hadn't admitted out loud in years. Saving them mattered to her more than saving herself. She braced again, lining up the next target. A deep breath, a long exhale, a heartbeat. Then a single, clean shot that changed everything below her. And she knew. This was only the beginning. Why did her hands stay steady when everything else inside her was shaking? The question flickered through Sarah's mind as the ridgeline trembled under the weight of gunfire below. She breathed slow, letting the tension bleed through her ribs and into the ground. Every sniper knew fear could tighten the muscles in your hands until your shots drifted inches off point. Inches meant lives. Inches were the difference between a SEAL dragging a wounded teammate to cover or collapsing in the dirt with another hole in him. But Sarah's hands didn't shake. Her heart did, her breath did, Her voice, when she tried to speak, caught in her throat. But the hands stayed steady. They always did. She didn't know if that steadiness made her brave or broken. Creed's team below was beginning to move, crawling to new angles, buying space in fractions of inches. The compound was still collapsing around them, riddled with holes from incoming fire. Fighters sprinted from alleyways, rooftops, trenches carved into the valley walls. More than she expected, more than anyone had intel on. Someone had set this ambush deliberately. That thought pierced her like a shard of ice. This wasn't random. This wasn't just the wrong place, wrong moment. This was planned. Perfect timing, perfect spacing, perfect angles. Sarah swallowed hard. Someone wanted Creed's team wiped out, completely erased. And maybe, just maybe, whoever planned this never expected someone like her on the ridgeline. She shifted slightly, adjusting her bipod, ignoring the sting from grit cutting into her elbows. Rook's voice behind her was faint, tight with pain. "How many so far?" he whispered. "Doesn't matter," she murmured. But she knew the number. Snipers always knew. 9. Her 10th target appeared through the shifting haze, an enemy sniper sliding into position behind broken masonry. Sarah saw the glint of glass half a second before he aimed. Her rifle cracked. The glint shattered. The man's body slumped forward, arms dangling over the stone. 10. The number didn't make her proud. It didn't make her feel powerful. It made her feel responsible. Because each one she missed was a bullet meant for a man below fighting to survive. Creed's voice broke through the comms again, breathless but trying to remain controlled. "We've got wounded who can't move. We need that northeastern ridge cleared or we're stuck." Sarah listened. She always listened before acting. But this time she did something unusual. She let herself feel the words. Not commands, not calls for support. Just human voices caught inside a death trap, hoping someone out there cared enough to pull them out of it. She cared more than she should. "Come on," she whispered, sliding her reticle across the valley, hunting the ridge Creed was desperate about. 3 fighters, 2 with rifles, 1 with a grenade launcher. She took them out one by one. Controlled shots, crisp, clean breaks, the type of shooting that would feel almost peaceful if not for the screaming below. The valley shifted again. New muzzle flashes, sharp angled, trained deliberately in her direction. They were hunting her now. She could tell by the way rounds zipped overhead, closer with each volley. Dust plumed along her ridge. A rock beside her face cracked, sending fragments slicing into her cheek. She flinched, breath catching. Rook tensed behind her. "They've got your range, Cade, you need to move." She didn't answer. "Not yet." Another SEAL screamed over comms, the kind of raw sound that ripped the air apart. Sarah swallowed hard. She couldn't unhear it, couldn't ignore it. That scream drilled into something deep inside her chest, a memory she'd spent years trying to bury. She forced the breath out of her lungs, pushed the memory aside, and pulled the trigger again. The hillside opposite her exploded with dust as 2 more fighters fell. Another ducked behind a rusted tank. Sarah waited. 1 second, 2. He popped his head up. 11. 12. 13. The math kept climbing. She didn't want it to, but if she didn't keep shooting, Creed's team wouldn't stand a chance. Another burst struck the stone in front of her. She didn't duck, didn't blink. Let the grit hit her. Let the ringing fill her ears. Something inside her hardened. The enemy wanted her attention. Fine, they had it. She tracked the muzzle flashes that gave away the shooter's position. A tiny opening between jagged rocks, a terrible angle, a nearly invisible shot. But nearly invisible was still visible. Sarah exhaled slow, long, controlled. Let the world shrink until nothing existed except the small slice of shadow where death lived. She pressed the trigger. The muzzle flash disappeared. 14. Her mind tried to race ahead, counting threats, calculating angles, searching for the next danger before it bloomed. But something strange stopped her, freezing her for the first time since the ambush began. It wasn't fear. It was the sound of Creed's voice again. "Unknown shooter, whoever you are, keep doing what you're doing." The words hit her differently. Whoever you are. He didn't know. None of them knew. They only felt her presence like a ghost in the ridgeline, a quiet force shifting the outcome of a fight they'd already started to lose. For a strange, fleeting moment, she wondered what they pictured when they thought of the shooter saving their lives. A veteran. A hulking operator. Some unseen legend. Certainly not her. Not a woman half buried in dust, bleeding from her cheek, heart pounding so hard she felt it in her fingertips, fighting back a storm bigger than anything she'd trained for. She almost smiled at the thought. Almost. Then the ground shook behind her. The first enemy climbers appeared, dark shapes scaling the ridge with rifles strapped across their backs, moving with determination. They weren't random fighters. They weren't untrained. They were coordinated. They were coming specifically for her. Rook saw them first. "Cade, behind you." Sarah twisted, fast, instinctive. The nearest climber was already raising his weapon. She didn't think. She fired. The man dropped, tumbling down the rocks. His partner ducked behind a boulder. She swung her rifle back toward the valley. She didn't have time to clear her flank. Not yet. She had to make every second count before they got close enough to overwhelm her. "Cade, move," Rook shouted behind her. "They're coming." "I know," she said quietly. Her heart felt like a fist inside her chest. Move and Creed's team dies. Stay and she dies. Her choice was immediate. She stayed. Another 3 rounds cut down fighters trying to reestablish firing angles on the compound below. A 4th shot eliminated a machine gun team repositioning to hit the wounded. 15. 16. 17. The climbers behind her grew louder, closer. She heard boots scraping rock, harsh, hurried breathing, angled footsteps. She fired again. 18. Someone below yelled that the pressure was easing. She could hear relief threading into their voices, hope returning. She didn't look up, didn't let herself. But she felt something shift inside her, something warm, dangerous, a spark of determination that felt almost like defiance. She wasn't leaving them. Not while she could still pull a trigger. Not while she still had breath left. Her rifle cracked again. 19. 20. And still the climbers advanced. But she didn't turn. Not yet. The next shot was everything, timed perfectly, placed precisely, saving a man she'd never meet, a man who would never know her name. 21. That was the moment Sarah Cade understood something she hadn't dared admit until now. It wasn't just about saving them. It was about redemption, hers. And she wasn't done. Not even close. What if this was the moment she trained for without ever realizing it? The thought surfaced in Sarah's mind as the ridge behind her erupted with the sharp echo of climbing boots and gravel sliding under determined feet. The enemy was no longer guessing. They weren't firing blind into shadows or hopping to flush her out. They knew exactly where she was now, and they were coming fast, committed, coordinated, deliberate. But Sarah still didn't turn toward them. Not yet. Her rifle remained locked on the compound, her cheek pressed to the stock. Her breathing narrowed into the slow rhythm she trusted more than the pounding of her own heart. Below, Creed's team staggered under the weight of suppression, but for the first time in nearly half an hour, they were starting to move with purpose again. Her purpose. She squeezed off another shot, then another. 2 fighters fell. A third dove behind cover, smart, quick, but not quick enough to escape her next round. 22. 23. The number rang in her head, heavy and unreal. She hated that she knew it, hated that each one of those numbers meant she was still behind this rifle while her own danger crawled up the ridge behind her. Then she heard it. A voice, low, determined, too close. "Up there, move, she's right above us." Her stomach clenched. They were within 100 meters now. Rook, pale and struggling to sit upright against a slab of rock, tried to lift his pistol. His hand shook violently. "Don't," Sarah whispered. "But there." "I know." She fired again into the valley, another enemy dropping, another moment bought for Creed's men. But her pulse had changed. Faster, hotter. The awareness of danger behind her pressed like a hand against the back of her skull. "Cade," Rook breathed, "they'll overrun us." "Not you. Not your position. Us." That word cut deeper than the incoming fire. She shifted her rifle slightly, scanning for one last critical threat in the compound. There, an RPG operator sprinting between walls, lining up a shot toward the wounded. Her reticle settled, breath paused, shot fired. 24. That one wasn't just a number. She felt it in her bones. If she'd missed, men below would be dead. Then something slammed into the dirt a foot from her shoulder, an incoming shot from the climbers behind her. Stone fragments tore into her neck and collarbone. She winced but didn't break position. Not yet. Only when Creed's voice crackled through the radio did she shift. "We're moving, pressure's down. Whoever you are, keep covering." His tone carried something she hadn't heard since the ambush started. "Hoping." Sarah allowed herself one final scan with her scope. The valley was shifting, fighters retreating or digging deeper, the sustained assault losing its cohesion. She'd done enough. Creed's men had the window they needed. Staying aimed downslope now meant risking everything for diminishing returns, returns she no longer needed to chase. Finally she turned. The first enemy climber crested the ridge 50 meters away. Instinct took over. Her rifle snapped to her shoulder, faster than thought, faster than fear. The man's silhouette lined up in her reticle for half a heartbeat. Then her shot hit square, knocking him backward in a tangle of limbs and cloth. Rook flinched at the sound, eyes wide with a mix of awe and panic. More. Sarah already knew. 3 more shadows appeared, rushing upward in coordinated waves, using rocks and ledges for cover. These weren't amateurs. These were trained fighters, possibly foreign-trained, possibly mercenaries, possibly here for her. Her rifle cracked again. A second climber dropped. A third ducked and returned fire, rounds snapping past her ear so close she felt the vibration. Sarah rolled sideways, dirt scraping her elbows raw, and reacquired the target. Shot. Impact. Fall. Another down. The last climber dove behind a large rock close, too close. She aimed for the corner he'd reappear from, waited, listened. Footsteps shifted. Left. She pivoted her aim. The man sprang out, rifle raised, firing wild but close. Her shot hit center mass. He crumpled where he stood. Silence, a harsh, brief silence. Not peace, merely a pause between storms. Rook exhaled shakily. "Cade, you're insane." She didn't respond. Her jaw was clenched too tight to speak. Because more voices were coming. More footsteps. More scrambling boots behind the ridge. The fighters she just eliminated were only the first wave. Sarah grabbed her radio. "Creed," she said, forcing her voice steady. "Climbers on my 6. They're hunting my position. How long until extraction?" A moment of static. "We've got wounded. We're consolidating. 5 minutes." 5 minutes. She didn't have 5 minutes. Not with the sound of at least 6 more fighters making their way toward her position. She wanted to move. Every tactical instinct screamed at her to run now, reposition, find new cover. But Rook couldn't move fast enough with his shoulder torn apart, and she refused, absolutely refused, to leave him behind. Cade, Rook started, but he didn't finish. The ridge behind them exploded with renewed gunfire, sharper this time, more coordinated. They weren't probing anymore. They were closing in. Sarah grabbed Rook by his vest and dragged him deeper into the shadow of a boulder, shielding him with her own body. "Stay down," she whispered. "What about? I'll handle the rest." She didn't say the quiet truth, even if the math didn't add up anymore, even if she was down to half her ammo, even if she was fighting a battle on two fronts she wasn't supposed to survive. She set up her rifle again, switching angles, giving herself enough visibility to catch movement from both directions. Below, Creed's team began pulling back toward extraction. She saw men carrying wounded, limping, gritting teeth, holding formation through sheer will. She had to buy them minutes. Maybe seconds. That was enough. It had to be. More fighters appeared, 8 this time, spreading across the slope, hunting her with urgency. She fired fast but controlled, dropping 2 in the open. The others scrambled into cover. Then they did something that cut straight through her composure. They didn't fire at her. They fired at Rook. The bullet smacked the stone inches above his head. He gasped, shrinking back. No. Absolutely not. Sarah shifted out of cover, exposing herself deliberately to draw their fire. Shots cracked past her again, kicking dirt into her face. She ignored them. She forced her breathing into the calm she needed. Reticle steady. Trigger press smooth. No panic. No hesitation. Her next shots ripped through 2 fighters trying to flank her right. Another round took the shoulder of a man sprinting upslope. He fell, rolling violently and disappearing into a tangle of rock. She was moving too fast, too exposed. Every second she stayed out here felt like a direct challenge to fate. But she didn't stop. Because the more chaotic the ambush became, the clearer something rose in her chest. A heat, a tremor, an old guilt she thought she'd buried for good. The reason she didn't hesitate. The reason she didn't run. The reason she didn't feel fear the same way others did. Long ago, she had frozen at the wrong moment. Someone died because of it. Tonight she wouldn't freeze. Tonight she wouldn't let anyone die while she had breath left and bullets in the rifle. Another climber rushed her position. She spun, fired, dropped him. Rook yelled her name. She turned again, too slow. Another fighter was already cresting the ridge, weapon raised. Her rifle swung toward him, but... Click. Empty. Her heart surged into her throat as she reached for her next magazine. And that was when she realized she was no longer fighting to save Creed's team. She was fighting to survive long enough to live with herself if she failed. How many times could someone outrun death before it finally caught up? The question slammed into Sarah's mind as her rifle clicked empty and the fighter on the ridge leveled his weapon at her. For a single frozen instant, the world shrank to a dot. His muzzle, her empty chamber, the inevitability between them. She didn't think. Training replaced thought. Her hand dropped to her belt, fingers closing around a full magazine. She slammed it into the rifle, hit the bolt release with the heel of her palm, brought the weapon up. Too slow. The fighter fired first. The round cracked against the boulder beside her head, showering her with stone. She didn't blink. She didn't flinch. She simply rolled off her current position, letting gravity pull her down a half-slope of loose gravel, gaining just enough separation to angle her rifle again. The fighter leaned forward for a second shot. Sarah fired. The impact punched him backward, his rifle slipping from his grasp as he stumbled and dropped out of sight. She exhaled, long, shaky, the kind of breath that carried both relief and the chilling realization that next time she might not be fast enough. Behind her, Nolan Rook gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stay conscious. "Cade," he hissed, "you can't fight both sides. Move now." She wanted to, she needed to, but moving meant exposing him. Moving meant leaving him, even if just for seconds. And she didn't leave people. Not anymore. She crawled back to him, checked his tourniquet, tightened the bandage with careful, practiced hands. He winced but didn't complain. His eyes, glassy with pain, searched her face. "Why are you still here?" It wasn't an accusation, it was confusion, bewilderment, a question that carried a deeper weight, one he couldn't possibly know. She didn't answer, because the real answer lived in the back of her mind, a place filled with memories she refused to let surface. Not here, not now, not while men below her were still fighting for air. She grabbed the radio. "Creed," she said, voice steady despite the chaos. "What's your status?" Static, then breathing, heavy, strained, but alive. "We're moving," he panted. "But we're taking fire from the northern wall. If they hit my medic again, we lose a man. We need that wall cleared." Sarah glanced downslope. There, 3 fighters dug into a barricade of stone, perfectly positioned to tear the SEAL team apart the moment they broke cover. They were disciplined. 2 clean firing lines, no wasted ammo, coordinated bursts. She dialed her scope, adjusting elevation. Those fighters weren't going to stop unless someone forced them to. Her finger tightened. But she hesitated. Not doubt, not fear. Timing. She watched the muzzle pattern, the rhythm, the moment between bursts when the shooter leaned into his rifle, committing to the next volley. That was her window. She took it. 1 shot. 2. 3. Each one cracked through the valley like a promise. 3 bodies slumped forward, rifles clattering against stone. Creed's voice came through again, strained but relieved. "Whoever you are, you just saved my medic." Her throat tightened unexpectedly. She swallowed it down. "Keep moving," she said, not revealing herself. "I'm still here." A truth she wasn't sure would stay true for much longer. Because the climbers were regrouping. She heard it first, a faint, unsettling clatter of rock, then the whisper of boots brushing granite, then voices, low, controlled, closer than before. Rook's eyes widened. They're flanking around both sides. She scanned with her peripheral vision. He was right. 4 fighters on the left, 3 on the right, 1 closer than the rest, 2 close. Sarah shifted to engage the nearest threat. But her rifle wasn't there. The slope had shifted. Her rifle had slid half a meter behind her when she moved earlier, close enough to grab, but not while 8 men were converging on her position. Her mind made a decision before her body could argue. She dropped the rifle. She drew her Glock. The weight felt wrong compared to the rifle, lighter, faster, more intimate. A weapon meant for moments without distance. Moments like this. The first climber appeared over a rock not 20 meters away. Sarah fired 3 rounds, 2 hit center mass. The third caught him before he fell. The second climber lunged from the right, firing as he ran. Sarah rolled sideways, absorbing dirt into her palms, and returned fire in a tight, controlled pattern. He fell, but the third was almost on top of her. Too close for clean shots. He grabbed for her vest, and her training took over. She drove her knee into his thigh, pivoted, slammed the barrel of her Glock under his ribs, and fired twice. His eyes widened in shock, then dimmed as he dropped beside her. Her breath came in bursts. 3 down. But 4 more remained, scattering, firing, trying to pin her and Rook from multiple angles. Rook, barely conscious, tried to raise his pistol again. "Stop," Sarah snapped, pressing him back into cover. "You'll make it worse." He stared at her with a desperation she felt deep in her chest. "You can't take all of them, Cade." A quiet certainty slipped into her voice. "Watch me." She rose from cover, fast but controlled, and fired at the next moving silhouette. The round caught him in the shoulder, spinning him off balance. She advanced 3 steps, fired again, dropping him cleanly. A shot grazed her arm, drawing a line of fire across her bicep. She hissed but didn't falter. Pain was familiar. Pain was manageable. Pain meant she was still alive. She turned toward the next fighter, saw the flicker of movement behind a rock and fired twice. The first missed. The second didn't. Movement to her left, another climber cresting. She pivoted, legs braced, breath steady. Except, her pistol clicked. Empty. She didn't have time to reload. The fighter charged. Sarah used the only weapon she had left, her momentum. She threw herself at him, body colliding with his in a violent tangle. His rifle skidded across the stone. They wrestled, movements frantic, unrefined, raw survival replacing technique. He slammed an elbow into her ribs. She gasped. He swung again. She blocked with her forearm, pain jolting up to her shoulder. He grabbed a knife. Rook shouted her name. She twisted, barely avoiding the blade, and grabbed the fighter's wrist with both hands. They struggled strength against leverage. She was smaller, lighter, but she had one advantage. She refused to die here. She wrenched the knife sideways, driving it into the rock. The fighter leaned into her, breath hot and foul, his weight crushing her. She shifted her hips, rolled, and used gravity to hurl him over her shoulder. He hit the ground hard. She grabbed the knife. And without hesitation, she ended him. Silence swallowed the ridge, not peace, just absence. Absence of gunshots. Absence of footsteps. Absence of the men who tried to kill her. Her arm bled freely now. Her hands trembled not from fear, but from adrenaline crashing through her veins. Rook stared at her, chest heaving. Cade, that was insane. She sat beside him, reloading her pistol, jaw clenched. No, she whispered, that was survival. Below, Creed's voice crackled through the radio. We're moving to the extraction point. We're in the open, enemies regrouping near the southern ridge. We need those guns neutralized or the bird can't land. Sarah looked at Rook. He looked at her. You can't fight anymore, she said softly. And you can't fight much longer, he replied. Their eyes held for one quiet moment, just long enough for Sarah to feel something she hadn't let herself feel all day. Fear. Not of dying, but of failing. She stood, grabbed her rifle again, wiped blood from her cheek and breathed deep. Failure wasn't an option. Not for her. Not anymore. Why did the battlefield always feel the quietest at the exact moment she needed it loud? The silence pressed against Sarah's ears as she rose from the blood-stained stone, Glock reloaded, rifle slung back into her hands, breath trembling but steady enough to shoot. The ridge around her was littered with bodies, 8 men who had fought hard, some brutally close, some only inches from ending her life. But she was still standing. Barely. Her arm throbbed, her neck stung, her ribs ached from the fight, dust clung to her skin like a second layer of exhaustion. And yet she knew something worse was coming. Rook managed to sit upright, teeth clenched against the pain pulsing through his shoulder. Cade your arm. I'll deal with it. You've been saying that for an hour. She glanced back at him. He was pale, shaking, bleeding, but refusing to pass out. The stubbornness made her jaw tighten with something between fear and pride. We're almost done, she whispered. Just hold on. But even as she said the words, she didn't believe them. The radio crackled with an urgency she felt deep in her bones. Any station, this is Rescue 6-1. We're inbound but taking heavy fire from the ridge. Multiple RPGs, multiple machine guns. We cannot land under this. Sarah froze. She had known the extraction would be chaotic. She hadn't expected this level of coordinated fire. Her eyes snapped to the southern ridge, an elevated stretch of jagged rock overlooking the extraction zone. That was when she saw them. Fighters she hadn't even touched yet. An entire separate element, fresh, organized, positioned for one purpose: destroy the rescue helicopter. Sarah's stomach curled into a hard knot. Creed's voice cut through the comms next, rough and cracking. "We have critical wounded. Repeat, critical wounded. We need that bird on the ground in 60 seconds or we lose people." Sarah lifted her scope. At least 10 fighters. 2 RPGs already aiming. A PKM team, unloading tracer fire into the approach path. Her heart sank. She couldn't fight all of them. Not with her ammo low, her body burning, the ridge collapsing around her. Not alone. But something in her chest pushed back against that thought, a heat that rose from a place older than training, older than fear. A place built from memory, a place built from regret. She steadied her rifle. "Cade," Rook whispered, reading her expression, "you don't have enough ammo for this." "Maybe not," she said quietly. "Then what are you doing?" She didn't answer. Truth would have slowed her down. And slowing down would kill them all. She dropped to prone behind a slab of stone, lined up her first target, the RPG gunner pivoting toward the incoming helicopter. Her vision tunneled, her breathing went soft. One shot. The RPG gunner jerked backward, rocket firing harmlessly into open sky. Next target. PKM gunner. 3 shots. Gunner down, assistant gunner down, ammo carrier scrambling. Shot through the hip. He fell screaming, clutching at the dirt. Sarah ignored the scream. Next target. A fighter ducked behind a wall. She waited. He peeked. A single round dropped him. The helicopter pilot's voice cracked through comms, relief mixing with adrenaline. "Effective fire, we're making our approach." "Keep coming," Sarah whispered, already shifting to the next threat. Her magazine ran dry. She reloaded without thinking, muscle memory moving faster than fear. She fired again and again. 2 more fighters down. Then, click. Empty. Her throat tightened. She looked at her vest. 1 magazine left. 20 rounds. 20 rounds against fighters who had the high ground, heavy weapons, and every tactical advantage. 20 rounds to keep Creed's wounded alive. 20 rounds to stop this from becoming another moment she would remember for the rest of her life, with a guilt she couldn't bear. "Cade," Rook said softly, "don't do it." She didn't answer. She slammed the magazine home. She moved to a new rock, exposing herself fully to get the angle she needed. Fire erupted instantly, rounds snapping inches from her head. She ducked, swung her rifle forward and fired through the dust. A fighter fell off the ridge, tumbling like a rag doll. 19. Another tried sprinting to a new vantage point. 18. Another RPG operator crawled into position. 17. The helicopter dipped dangerously, flaring to avoid incoming fire. Sarah grit her teeth. 16. 15. 14. Her shots were hitting clean, too clean for someone losing blood as fast as she was. A truth she refused to process. Bullets slammed into the dirt beside her. 2 ricocheted so close she felt the burn on her cheek. She didn't move, not an inch. She had no more room for fear. Only duty. Only purpose. Only the stubborn refusal to let men die, while she could still lift her rifle. Another fighter aimed at the Black Hawk. 13. The helicopter pilot's voice cracked through the radio, almost breaking. "Ridge fire is dropping. Sniper, keep it up, we're coming in." Her breathing grew shallow, her arms trembled. 12. 11. 10. She could feel her vision tunneling, darkness creeping at the edges, but she forced every round to count. 9, 8, an entire world collapsing into numbers she didn't want to track. But she did anyway. 7, 6. Then, her bolt locked back. Empty. No ammo. No long gun left. The silence that followed wasn't real silence. It was the moment before collapse, the moment when exhaustion tried to claim her. Rook's broken voice reached her like a fatting echo. "Cade, you're done. You have to move. They're coming. You can't fight anymore." She didn't respond. She holstered the Glock. 45 rounds left. Not nearly enough for open combat, but enough to make someone pay for every step they took toward her. She grabbed Rook and hauled him upright, teeth clenched against the screen building behind her ribs. "Stay close," she whispered. The valley below roared. The helicopter landing, SEALs shouting, wounded being dragged aboard, rotors beating against the dirt. Hope, but not safety. Not for her. She heard voices above her, shouts carrying through rock. They were coming. They had seen her. And they were angry. The sniper who had single-handedly shattered their ambush. The ghost on the ridgeline. The woman they assumed was a man, until she started cutting through their fighters like a blade through cloth. Sarah looked at Rook. "Move," she said, pushing him forward. "Now." Her legs trembled. Blood dripped onto the stone with each step. But she moved anyway. Because she finally admitted something she hadn't dared let herself say aloud. She wasn't fighting for survival. She was fighting so she could live with herself afterward. And she wasn't done yet. Why did survival always feel hardest after the shooting stopped? The thought flickered in Sarah's mind as she stumbled through the Wadi, supporting Nalan Rook with one arm while gripping her Glock in the other. The world had shrunk to a narrow corridor of stone and dust, each breath scraping her lungs raw, each step pressed by the knowledge that fighters were closing in from behind. She could hear them, shouting, scrambling, furious, the kind of fury born not from strategy but humiliation. She had ruined their perfect ambush. She had dismantled their heavy guns. She had clipped their advance one trigger press at a time. They weren't just hunting her now. They wanted to erase her. The Wadi twisted sharply, giving brief shelter from the line of fire above. Rook's boots dragged across loose gravel as he leaned heavier and heavier on her. His voice was faint, but still there. "You should have left me back there." She tightened her grip around his vest. "Shut up. You can't carry me and fight. I'm not leaving you." He didn't argue again. Maybe he didn't have the strength. Maybe he finally understood that once Sarah Cade made a decision, the world itself would have trouble shaking her off it. Rounds smacked into the canyon walls behind them, echoing like thunder trapped in a bottle. Dust rained down. Sarah forced herself forward, deeper into the twists and shadows of the narrow terrain. Ahead, just barely visible through slivers of sky, was the flat patch she'd identified during her first recon. Extraction Point Bravo. If she could reach it, she could radio Creed. They'd bring the bird back. She just had to survive long enough to signal them. A figure appeared ahead, silhouetted against the light. For a split second, time froze, enemy or friendly. The muzzle flash gave her the answer. She shoved Rook aside and dropped into a slide, Glock snapping upward mid-motion. Her first shot hit the attacker's knee, the second sent her chest, the third insurance. He collapsed face first into the dust. 3 more fighters emerged behind him. Sarah grabbed Rook and dragged him behind a rock just as another volley ripped into the dirt. She peeked around the edge, quick, precise, no wasted movement, and returned fire. One round took the nearest fighter in the throat. Another caught a man mid-step. The last dove behind cover, returning fire with a fury born of desperation. She had maybe 20 rounds left. Maybe. Her arm burned. Her ribs screamed. A wave of dizziness hit her so hard she caught herself on the rock to stay upright. "You okay?" Rook asked. She let out a humorless laugh. "No." But she stood anyway. She fired again, forcing the last fighter behind cover. She used the moment to move Rook farther down the Wadi, pushing through exhaustion, forcing her legs to remember the strength they once had before the day consumed it. Ahead, finally, the ground opened into a small basin, the exact kind of landing zone a pilot could set a bird into for a few precious seconds. They had made it. Almost. A sudden voice echoed from behind. "There." Sarah spun around. 4 fighters different from the rest. Better gear, better posture, more disciplined movement. These weren't local militia. This was the team meant to finish her. The leader raised his rifle. Sarah didn't think. She fired. Her shot hit him in the shoulder, spinning him off balance. The others split into angles, firing with frightening coordination. She threw Rook behind a shallow embankment and dove with him, landing so hard pain shot through her ribs like a blade. Rounds stitched the dirt around her. She crawled up, found the first silhouette, fired 3 rounds, 2 hit. The hostile dropped. Another advanced along the right ridge, ducking low, weapon raised. Sarah tracked him. Click. Empty. Her heart lurched. She ejected the mag and reached for a spare. Only 1 left. 15 rounds. She slammed it home and leaned out again, firing at the advancing fighter. 1 round grazed him. Another struck his weapon. The third found his chest. 2 left. They moved like they'd trained for exactly this kind of terrain, bounding forward, covering each other, refusing to expose themselves. Damn good soldiers. She swallowed hard, because for the first time, she wasn't sure if she could beat them. Her pistol barked again, forcing the left fighter into deeper cover, but the one on the right rushed forward with terrifying speed. She hit him twice, 1 in the leg, 1 in the hip, but he didn't stop. He lunged. She barely had time to roll. He tackled the ground where she'd been, sliding in the dirt, reaching for another weapon strapped to his vest. She fired point blank. He went still. Only 1 left. She rose, staggered to a knee, pistol wavering in her grip. Blood dripped from her fingers. She felt lightheaded, detached, like her body was moving a few seconds behind her mind. Then, a voice echoed across the Wadi. "Sniper, this is Creed. Mark your position." Sarah blinked, a beat late, a beat slow. "Creed." She grabbed the IR strobe from her vest and slammed it against a rock. It blinked weakly, barely holding power, but it was on. "Strobe active," she gasped into the radio. The last fighter charged. She raised her pistol. But before she could fire, the sky erupted. A roar split the air, deep, mechanical, violent. The Apache. It dove into the Wadi like a beast unleashed, its 30 chain gun spinning up with a low, terrifying hum. A burst of fire ripped through the canyon. Stone exploded. Dust turned into smoke. The fighter vanished in a cloud of pulverized earth and shattered rock. Sarah staggered backward as the Apache lifted, rotors slicing the air with thunder. "You're clear," the pilot called. "Extraction bird inbound, 30 seconds." She almost laughed. Almost. But then her knees buckled. Rook caught her sleeve, barely holding himself upright. "You made it," he whispered. She shook her head. "No, we made it." The Black Hawk skimmed over the ridge, nose dipping, rotors beating down a storm of wind. It touched the ground in the basin for barely a second before the crew chief was shouting, waving, pointing them in. Sarah pulled Rook up with the last strength she had. Together, they staggered forward, each step heavier than the last. Creed appeared in the doorway, reaching out a hand. Come on, sniper, move. Sarah's foot slipped. Her vision went black around the edges. Creed jumped down, grabbed both her and Rook, and hauled them inside as the helicopter lifted again. Inside, the wind roared, dust swirled. The world tilted, but Sarah barely noticed. She collapsed against the wall of the bird, chest heaving, sweat mingling with blood, exhaustion sinking into her bones like lead. Creed knelt in front of her, studying her with something close to disbelief. You took out God knows how many. You saved every one of us. She shook her head weakly. I didn't save anyone alone. No, he said softly, but none of us survived today without you. For a moment, everything stilled. The chaos faded behind them. The battlefield shrank into memory. The night air cooled her burning skin. And in the quiet that followed, she let herself feel the weight of everything she'd held back. The fear, the doubt, the determination that had nearly broken her. But she didn't feel regret. Not this time. As the helicopter carried her away, Sarah Cade finally understood the truth she'd spent years avoiding. She hadn't fought because she was fearless. She had fought because she cared. Deeply, quietly, fiercely. And caring had nearly cost her life, but it had saved others. Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes it was everything. The lights of the forward base appeared on the horizon, shimmering like distant promises. Sarah leaned her head back against the metal bulkhead, eyes heavy. Her breath softened. Her heartbeat slowed. And in the fatting thrum of adrenaline, she felt something almost peaceful. A quiet voice inside her whispered the lesson she'd earned the hard way. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And then it endures.